For me, it was not.
So about the question that talks about the Gallup poll, the influence of it's okay, the influence of the constituents. You can also talk about the fact that you have a direct influence on the House of Reps, which you vote for, as opposed to the senators who you don't for. Okay, next question. What is does the judiciary branch depend on public opinion? So no, it does not. So they base it all on the Constitution. So what is de-alignment? So de-alignment is kind of people moving away from both parties. In other words, it's kind of like a trend or process whereby a large portion of the electorate abandons its previous partisan affiliation without developing, etc. So pretty much just moving away from to different parties. So do you have that? Yeah. Okay. So what strategies do interest groups use to get to Congress to make changes? So lobbying members of Congress make changes in existing policies. They use their lobbies for this, right? Do you have that? But yeah, they make changes in existing policies. So what are political parties? These are groups seeking influence in government by getting people elected to political or public office. So what are national conventions? How parties nominate presidential candidates and draft party platforms. This is what happens at a national convention, right? A group seeking to get people elected to political office. This is a political party again. What is ticket splitting? So ticket splitting is kind of voting for one party for one office and another party for another office. It is the act of voting for candidates from different political parties for different offices. So two different things happening. What does winner take all mean? So winner take all is kind of like a phrase that kind of says that the candidate who receives the most electoral votes in the election wins, right? Okay. So Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission of 2010 is what? So this case, which covers the First Amendment, deals with the independent campaigns. How much money you can spend with a political campaign. This deals with corporations and unions. So it's just a case about campaigns and how much money they can spend. What are policy generalists? So these are different forms of interest groups who have very vague ideas and policies. Interest groups. It is an organization of people who share a common interest. So again, interest groups. If you don't know what those are, this is an organization of people who share a common interest and work together to protect and promote that interest by influencing the government and their constituents. So who raises and who spends money on election campaigns? This is a committee that you should definitely know. It's called the Political Action Committee, and the acronym for it is PAC. Back. So what is gerrymandering? Gerrymandering. So gerrymandering is kind of the party in control of the state legislature draws district boundaries in such a way to favor its own candidates in future elections. So it is like an oddly shaped district to help increase voting. So they draw weird boundaries so they can increase their voting, right? So power positions generally only go to re-elect incumbents, which are the people who are currently holding office.
Just like Republicans.
Republicans, right?
Right now, Republicans are the ones holding power. Because
Right.
that's who the president is. So it all depends on who president. Like when Obama
Yeah.
was president, the Democrats
Pretty much
were
just
in
people,
power.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but now since Trump won, the
Different thing.
Republicans are in power.
So what qualifies a congressperson to influence policy? Experience. What is power position? So power position is the committee share people who share all the powers. They're the power position who are able to control all these different committees that exist, such as the Ways and Means Committee. So they're like the top of all the committees, pretty much, right?
But aren't there various committees?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
What illustrates the balance of power between the House and the Senate? Impeachment. Because you cannot impeach anybody in the legislative side. Under the Constitution, the House has the power to impeach a government official, in effect serving as a prosecutor. The Senate has the sole power to conduct impeachment trials, so they can really do much. They essentially serve as jury and judge. Why are the more numbers governing the House than the Senate? Pretty simple. Because the larger your population is in a state, the more representatives you will have from the House of Representatives. Because remember that you have 2 Senates for every state for the House of Representatives. It all depends on the population. Now, the legislative process ends once the president vetoes a bill. No, it does not. So if the president vetoes a bill, Congress may attempt to override the veto. If both the Senate and the House passed the bill by a 2/3 majority, the president's veto is overruled and the bill becomes a law. Why is the line item veto unconstitutional? So the line item veto is kind of the president saying that the president will be making the law. This is where the president can rewrite what he didn't like on the bill. It's unconstitutional because he's making a law and only Congress could do this. Like he's pretty much breaking the whole thing.
They can't make laws.
Right. When the bill goes to the conference committee, what will happen to the two chambers of Congress? So the two chambers will work together on that particular bill. How can the president persuade the public to support their policies? Through social media, believe it or not. How many votes does it take to override a presidential vote? It takes 2/3 of the vote of the Senate and the House. 2/3. Can the president win an election without winning the popular vote? Yes, it's called the electoral vote.
Yeah. That's
Explain the electoral.
which group won by electoral vote? Wasn't it Hillary?
Hillary, yeah, she won the electoral vote. She didn't win.
Well, she didn't win the presidency. So she won
Popular vote,
popular
yeah,
vote.
popular
She won
vote.
popular
Mhm.
vote. And Trump won the electoral vote.
Right. So explain the elastic clause. So this gives Congress the right to make a law necessary and proper to carry out its express, which are the ones in the Constitution, powers. So this is located in Article 1, Section 8, in case you want to know where it is. What is the difference between a treaty and an executive agreement? So agreements between the U.S. and foreign countries that are negotiated by the President and approved by the Senate. These are the treaties, right? And executive agreements are between the U.S. and foreign countries and are effective when signed by the President. So in the other one, the President kind of has to get it approved by the Senate, whereas the other executive treaties are only by the President. What is dual court system? So this means federal and state court. If you break a federal law, then you go to federal court. But if you break a state law, you go to state court. Explain the process of appointing a federal judge. So simple. President appoints the judge, and then he has to get approval from the Senate. Okay, question 49. What is the rule to get a case reviewed by the Supreme Court? So, for the Supreme Court, the case has to go through the district courts to appellate courts. A case must involve an issue of federal law or otherwise fall within the jurisdiction of federal courts. But again, it has to first go through the lower courts. So what is the primary way the president can control bureaucracy?
What is bureaucracy?
I'll get into that. So the first way of doing this is by nominating people to certain office positions. If the president appoints someone to this cabinet, then they have to go through the Senate. Advisors go through no process whatsoever, such as national security or the press security or a secretary. But if it's the Secretary of State, such as a CIA official, then these people have to go through the Senate confirmation process. And again, if you're not familiar with the term bureaucracy, it refers to a system where the important decisions are made by state officials rather than elected representatives. Do you have a simplified way of saying that? No? Yeah, pretty clear.
When they choose what's important.
Right. So the state officials choose what's important.